Hello everyone, my name is Kathryn Mahan. I am the Ecological Monitoring Program Manager at the New Mexico Forest and Watershed Restoration Institute. I've been asked to talk a little bit about forest and tree recovery from fire in the context of the Hermit's Peak and Calf Canyon fire. I am also a resident of Las Despensas, New Mexico. My family and I were also impacted by this fire. You can see the little black X in the Hermit's Peak fire perimeter. That's where our house was. That beautiful view of Hermit's Peak is just down the road from where we live. The photo on the left is my daughter and I working in the woods. And the photo there in the center is of my husband when we were building our house. You saw us building our house earlier. This is our house finished in Las Despensas. This was our house on April 11th. As far as we know, April 12th, sorry. As far as we know, this was the first structure lost in the Hermit's Peak fire. We're right next to the Forest Service, we're first in line. Talk just a second about the survival of individual trees after fire. So we mentioned that ponderosa pine has that really thick bark and is pretty well adapted to fire. The two fire types that we just talked about, the ponderosa pine and the dry mix conifer with the Douglas fir, those are considered frequent fire forests in the Southwest. So many of the trees that naturally occur in those forests are in general considered to be fire adapted. That said, they're not adapted to the types of fire that we've been seeing recently, and you're still going to have a lot of mortality of trees after fire. To evaluate this at the individual level, it's helpful to think about the ways that fire kills trees. In general, trees are killed outright by high-intensity fires that get up into the crown. When you have mixed severity or lower intensity fire, you can kill trees in a number of different ways that may not be immediately obvious. The ways that we're going to talk about include leaf or needle scorch, meaning you can see that they're brown. They haven't necessarily been entirely consumed by that fire, but they have been scorched by the heat. Trees can be killed by root damage, by damage to the trunk or branches, by damage to the inner tissue, the cambium, or by damage to the buds where the new growth occurs. When you're thinking about looking at trees maybe on your own property and understanding whether they are likely to survive or not, maybe you're making decisions about whether to cut them down or to leave them, keep in mind that the majority of fire-related mortality on trees occurs during the second growing season following the fire. And about 90% of all the death that we're going to see from this fire will occur within 3 years. That means that the trees that are going to die because of this fire, but may not be dead yet, most likely will die within the next 3 years. So one of the first places you can start when going out on your land is looking at crown scorch. That's the percentage of the crown of the foliage on your trees that has been turned brown because of this fire. You can kind of get an estimate of the percentage of crown that has been scorched. In this image, both the firs on the left and the pines on the right have 20 to 30% scorch. We know as a general rule of thumb that firs can survive up to 50% scorch, and pines can survive up to 75% crown scorch. If you want to get more into detail, I have included a table on the lower right that shows you the percent of crown remaining and the chance of survival specifically for ponderosa pine. That would allow you to go out and look on your land and figure out what chance each tree has. Here we see a couple of examples. The trees on the left are likely to survive based solely on the crown scorch, and the trees on the right are not likely to survive. Another thing we mentioned is looking at the condition of the buds. You can see on the left, we have 2 pictures of Douglas fir buds. When you're trying to look at buds, it can be really helpful to get a pocket knife and actually break the buds off the tree, slice them open, and see if they're still moist and green inside. You can't always tell that by looking at the outside. If the buds are moist and green, then they have a good chance of being able to produce new growth. If the buds are brown and crunchy, they're not going to be able to produce new growth, and that tree is not likely to survive. You have the same thing with pictures of pine on the lower right. Pine buds are often protected by their needles, so even if the needles are scorched around that, if you can peel back the needles, you might find green protected buds on the inside. When you want to look at the bark, you'll see 4 yellow arrows here suggesting that when you check bark of a tree, you need to check in more than one location. Trees can be girdled by heat the same way that they could be girdled mechanically. So a tree that's had fire burn all the way around it is in worse shape than a tree where the flames maybe went up just one side. So you can use a pocket knife or a hatchet or another tool depending on the type of tree and how big the tree is to get all the way down to that inner bark layer and look and see if it's still moist and cream colored or light green depending on the type of tree that you're looking at, which would tell you that it's still alive. Or you can see whether it's dead, dry, and brown and crunchy like you're used to seeing on your firewood. If you check in 4 locations around that tree and the inner bark is dead in more than 2 of those locations, the tree is likely to die. When we're talking about mortality from the roots, that typically occurs because of heat. So you can see in the lower 2 pictures that in one of the pictures a tree burned all the way out and created stump holes where the roots actually burned out underground. So there was some intense heat in the ground there that likely is affecting the trees on either side and is likely to have killed the roots of those trees. Same thing if you have that really white ash or the pink soil, that indicates that there was a lot of heat right around the base of that tree that may have killed the roots. The upper 2 pictures, you can see that the fire went through, but you don't see evidence of really intense heat around the roots, and they don't have a particular reason to think that the roots would have been fire killed. If you have a tree that you want to save, these are some recommendations. Water the tree as soon as possible. Remember that your fire may have made your soil hydrophobic, meaning when you pour the water on, it may run off without soaking in. If you see that happening, you'll need to remove the top 1 or 2 inches of soil with a shovel or a hoe so that you can get water down to the roots of the tree. Once that's done, you can irrigate if you have a soaker hose or a drip line. Wrap it around your tree, irrigate to get the water down to about 12 to 15 inches deep, which is where the roots are. Usually that, if you leave a soaker hose running for about an hour, that should get the water down that deep. Then you can go back and move your soaker hose out a little bit and repeat and repeat and repeat until you've gotten all the way out to the drip line of your tree. It's also recommended that you lightly mulch around where you have watered and crimp the mulch in, which is using a shovel to push it into the ground just a little bit so that the wind doesn't blow it away. If you have a tree that's been defoliated by the fire, you might want to consider protecting your tree from sunburn. That would be protecting the bark. You can do that using cloth or flexible cardboard to wrap your tree, or you could use a water-based white paint. If you use cloth or cardboard to make a wrap, be aware that you'll have to go back every few months and loosen that to allow your tree to continue growing. If you're using a paint, make sure that you don't use petroleum or oil-based paints because those can damage the bark. It's also recommended that you prune and remove material that is obviously dead. This is to avoid attracting insects, and the timing of this may depend on the type of tree that you're working with. If you're working with a pine, you might consider doing your pruning and removal in the fall so that you're not attracting bark beetle, and we'll talk about bark beetle a little bit more later on. One thing that we haven't talked about a lot with all of this is types of trees like apple and oak that may resprout from the base. So a general rule of thumb with all of this is to be conservative. If you have the option to leave the tree for a season or two and water it and take care of it and see how it's doing, you have a better chance than of knowing for sure whether that tree is going to survive or not, versus trying to make all of these decisions right away in the season immediately after the fire. If you take any one of these, put this information into Google, you will come up with the article. Many of them were written by my colleagues, and they were written in a way that they are accessible to folks who don't have a scientific background. They may not be the most fun to read, but they will be helpful. You will get something out of them. So any one of these, if you would like to follow up on for further reading, you can find them online. Lastly, I wanted to end with this. If you would like more information about the New Mexico Forest and Watershed Restoration Institute, these are several of the ways that you can contact us, follow us, and stay aware of what we're working on. Thank you.